Hi, everyone, and welcome to Life Unpotted Community Series. We are so happy you're here, and I will say, as I always do, if you like this series, write us in a question. Everyone here is a listener, and there's no difference between you and these people that are writing in. So if you have anything cross your mind, email us at info@livelifeunpotted.com because we would love to hear from you. We are so excited. Today we have a listener write-in, but it's actually not a write-in. She sent us a voice memo. So we're very excited to play that for you, and we'll go ahead and let you all hear that.
Hello, Daisy. Hello, Sophie. I have noticed over the past couple of months through my journaling practice and just kind of like sitting with my thoughts, which is a type of meditating, I guess. I've noticed that I have this kind of nasty habit of anytime that I feel uncertain or I just don't feel like I have the answer to a somewhat existential question, such as, what should I do for my work? Why am I unhappy? Those kinds of questions that make me feel really uncertain. I will go to Google sometimes. Like, I have literally Google searched, am I with the right partner? Or I've literally Google searched, like, what job should I do if I enjoy being creative? And I've just kind of realized that I don't think that's doing me any good. And I used to be really reliant on it. Like, anytime I felt any uncertainty, I would just like immediately Google, why am I feeling this way? Or like, looking for some kind of answer. But now that I've noticed the habit, I've tried to start doing it less, but I definitely still feel pulled to do it, or pulled like some kind of calling for some kind of external validation or just some kind of answer to like get me out of this discomfort and this uncertainty. So I'm just curious, you guys talk a lot about sitting in uncertainty and being uncomfortable, and I'm just curious to hear if you guys have any tactics on how to build confidence in discomfort, and like, what are your guys' takes on external validation? Have you ever Googled anything like that? What are some practices that you do to like build your confidence? Because I think a lot of times when I am Googling that kind of stuff, it's because I'm feeling really insecure and just like not sure of myself. Yeah, I would just like to learn how to like always come back to myself and not rely on others' advice or the Google search to find these answers. And like, how can I tap into my intuition more to kind of like feel my way through the uncertainty and just like find that security again instead of like panicking and going to the Google. So yeah, just something that I've noticed in my behavior. And yeah, I'm just really trying to build more confidence and like not doubt myself so much. And yeah, I'm just curious if you guys have any thoughts on that. So really loving your stuff. Thanks again. Take care.
What a great message, right? So she also wrote in a follow-up, and I'll go ahead and read that. Also, I wanted to follow up to make my voice memo a little bit more clear. I think a lot of my uncertainty comes from feeling like I don't know what I want in life. How can I know what I want? I think I already maybe inherently know what I want, but maybe I'm too afraid to accept it. Maybe my limiting beliefs make me think my wants are too far out there. What happens if my wants change? These are other questions that I ask myself, and I think the answers could help me build confidence and connect to myself.
All right, we got a lot going on in that question. There's a lot to unpack there. I think maybe my first comment is maybe she should make the switch from Google to ChatGPT. I heard that can help you find yourself a little better. I really wanted to make that joke because I just think it's funny because I have asked ChatGPT questions like with that coming out, and not questions really about like my life, but I don't know. Anyway, I think there's a lot to talk about with this one. I think the main theme is kind of like, how do we know ourselves? How do we figure out what we want? And I think that's something that's not really taught. We're not really taught in school. How do we sit with ourselves? Like, how do we connect with our intuition? And for me, the way I've learned to do that has been through meditating. Mushrooms was a huge one, and just really allowing my emotions to take their natural course. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we all have certain tendencies of things that we do to avoid feeling that they're feeling. So for some people, you start feeling a little anxious or uncomfortable, so you go make your coffee, or you call your friend, or you have a drink of wine, or you do something, you put on a TV, you go on TikTok. We do certain things that inhibit the natural course of progression of our emotions from taking course. So let's just say like our emotions require 100% completion before we get an insight. Oftentimes we stop that at 20%. 20% being that time where you start to feel really uncomfortable and you're like, I don't like this. Like, I feel really, really weird. I just feel anxious. Like, what do I do? What do I do? And maybe you're not saying that out loud, but your mind is kind of telling you that. And that's, I think, where the distractions come in. Or that's where we're going, I want an answer. Let me go to Google. Let me search. Let me ask these questions and figure out, like, I need an answer. How can I find that?
Oh, yeah. I think that is probably the most relatable thing that I've heard in a while. I have always been that person of, you know what? I'm going to go Google search because, right, I'm not sure about my relationship. I'm not sure about my career path. All of the answers are definitely going to be found in Google, right? Because there's people out there who know these things. There's people who know more than me, right? Wrong. I think that it's really interesting how we look for answers to ease our discomfort through searching for answers through Google. But something more powerful than Google is yourself. And the thing is, there's a quick fix, a quick ease of discomfort through looking to Google for your answers because it's simple. It's outside of yourself. There's simple answers that are black and white. But within yourself, there is stronger answers, and she feels like she knows what she needs to do. But only can we get to that place and get to those answers the more we sit with ourselves, the more we deeply feel through what we're thinking and feeling. And I think that actually is not going to ease your discomfort. I don't think there's any way around easing your discomfort with uncertainty other than just continuing to allow yourself to sit in uncertainty. The longer you do it, you're going to come out of it. Right? And then you go back in it and it's like that. But I really think there's no ease for that. I think the closest thing to it is to continuously go deeper and allow yourself to feel more uncomfortable. And I think to double down there, I would also say it's to let go of your preference when it comes to that. To let go of the idea that you shouldn't be uncomfortable, that you should be comfortable. Why should you be comfortable? In this essence of your emotions about feeling what career path or what partner to have. I think that by doing Google searches and these kinds of more quick fix routes, I don't think we actually want the answers when we do that. I think we just want to feel better. I think that's all it is. We don't want the answers because I found myself doing this all the time. And I won't let myself do that anymore because I realize that inundating myself with more people's opinions that I don't want about things they don't understand that I'm going through. Why would I want their opinion? Right. There's a time and there's a place for this. There's people who help you think and expand and broaden your mind that might help you further connect with yourself. But the answers are always going to be found within yourself. And I don't think there's any great hacks to sitting in discomfort or uncertainty other than just building resistance and a pattern to do it. Like I've said it time and time before, but I feel like for me, sometimes doing this podcast is sitting in uncertainty because I mean, we have the questions now prepared by our listeners for the series, but we never know what we're going to talk about otherwise going into this. We just fully let go. And that used to be wildly uncomfortable. And now it's not nearly as uncomfortable depending on the day, right? So I think it's a matter of just going deeper, sticking with it. And you know that. I know the listener knows that. And it's just a matter of knowing that there will be an end to the discomfort, knowing that you may not know when that is, but it will come eventually.
I was just having a lot of thoughts, but then I forgot. But I wanted to read an excerpt from the surrender experiment that really embodies the concept that we're talking about in terms of how we grow up thinking, especially in the school system, that our mind has all the answers. So when you're going to Google, you're thinking your way through the problem. And that is exactly why we end up in a place where we don't have the answers, because we're using our mind to try to get the answers. And this might not make sense, because I understand that it could be really confusing to be like, well, what do you mean I'm using my mind to find the answers? What else can I use? I only have my mind to view the world. And this is where, when you get deeper in this journey, you start to understand that, like, when we say this so many times, that like you have thoughts and then you have an intuition. You have the mind chatter and then you have this deep sense of knowing. And a lot of the times for me, it's like when I'm looking to find the answers for things, like when I'm really caught up in something and I'm struggling for something and I'm sitting there thinking and journaling about it, there's definitely a time and a place for that. But then when do I find the most clarity? When I go and do something, when I go meet up with friends or go for a walk or distract myself. And I think, no, not to distract myself, but to take my mind off of it. I think there's one level of that being important, and recognizing that, like, the way our brains process things, sometimes we need to go and take a break from what we're thinking about to get the answers what we want. But for deeper questions of things that we're going through, maybe for like over the course of a year or 2 years, I understand that you might not get the answer right away. So I want to read this excerpt, and I think it might help us kind of get to where I think this conversation will probably go. Okay, so for reference, I'm reading from the Surrender Experiment, and Michael Singer, he's talking all about his experience surrendering. And he talks about how he's preparing to write his thesis for the college that he was at. And I'll just go ahead and read it. At some point in the process, a flash of inspiration welled up inside of me. I went from not knowing what I was going to do with the paper to knowing exactly what I was going to write. It was as though a cloud of knowing instantly formed back behind the quiet mind. It happened as fast and as powerful as a flash of lightning. At first, no thoughts were involved. It was more of a feeling, just a definitive knowing that I now knew where the paper was going and how to get there. And then the thoughts began to form. They came slowly at first, then they poured into my mind. And then he goes on to say, as evidence from recounting 40 years later, the experience that night had a profound impact on me. I had clearly seen the difference between creative inspiration and logical thought. I knew where thoughts came from, but where did inspiration come from? It came from a much deeper place than where I witnessed the thoughts. It came spontaneously, in total silence, with no effort or commotion. No matter how hard I might have tried, I could never have written the paper based solely on the efforts of my logical mind. I wondered if there's a way to tap into the brilliance of that inspiration on a regular basis. It would be years, but I would eventually learn that one can constantly live in that state of creative inspiration. So I think what he's really talking about here is kind of like, we all have this innate knowing of the things that we want to do in life, who we really are, and it's buried so deep from what we can access, I guess, in this moment. I think we've pushed and suppressed a lot of stuff down. I think what she follows up in the question being like, how can I know what I want? I think I already may inherently know what I want, but maybe I'm too afraid to accept it. Maybe my limiting beliefs make me think my wants are too far out there. Like, as somebody who has come to terms with my sexuality at the age of like 27, of years of, I guess, subconsciously suppressing it, and then recognizing I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, and then making all these drastic changes, I feel like this journey for me has just been a journey of coming back to who I always was. Like, it's been a journey of coming back to who I was when I was 5 years old. And maybe I didn't know all these things at that age, but I feel like I embodied it more. I was more in touch with my creative side. I was more just myself. I wasn't thinking about myself so much. I didn't have this idea of myself so ingrained of what I can and can't do. So when she says, like, maybe I really do know, but I'm too scared to confront it, I think we all deep down know what we want. I really, really believe that. I think for some of us, I think it could be very, very difficult to access that because of years and years of experiences where we've suppressed those emotions, where society has told us, oh, that's too far away from our dreams, or there's no way you can do that, or you're going to get judged for doing that, or that's wrong, or whatever it is. It's like we've formed this cake of all these ideas that are going farther and farther up, and at the very bottom of that cake, or it's like envisioning like peeling back an onion and all the layers of an onion, or all the layers of emotions and thoughts that you've cumulatively believed throughout your life. And I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think what I'm really trying to think and respond to her is like, the answers are inside of her. And when we go to Google and we go to these places and we're looking externally, what we're really doing in those moments is we're acting at a place of not having trust in ourselves.
I have a great example. So typically with these types of questions, we read them, right? Because they're usually written in that kind of format. Where here we played her voice memo and I transcribed it with technology, whatever, and I keep pulling it to look at it because I want to reply to it directly, where I've listened to the note several times. I know the question that she's asking. I understand the core of it. So, and I know I can talk on that. I know I've experienced it firsthand. So why do I keep pulling the transcript up to look at it as I'm talking? Why do I not think I have the answers when I know I have the answers? And I think the point to be made here is kind of like what Michael Singer made in that book, is that there's a difference between the logical mind and what goes beyond that, which I think is flow in some ways, is us letting go. It's us surrendering to the moment, no matter what we feel, if we feel prepared or if we feel competent, whatever it may be, is that we let go of any of the ideas that are holding us back. And I think this can be applied to the question through the lens or through the idea that we never know the answers really, but we can know if we allow ourselves to fumble around in the discomfort of not knowing them. That ultimately is what allows us to get those answers. At the end of the day, it's always going to be a race of, or a competition of, if there is going to be anything like that with ourselves, of how much uncertainty can you handle? How much discomfort can you handle? And the answer is, it's limitless, it's unmatched, but how much do you think you can handle? And I think it's learning to continuously allow yourself to feel that discomfort. And I do think there are periods of time where it's cyclical, where we go back and forth, up and down, and we come into it, we come out of it. But there's always going to be those moments of clarity. And those moments of clarity may be few to come by. We might be thinking we're having a moment of clarity when in reality it's not a moment of clarity, because how we find moments of clarity typically is through doing the work. It's when we actually allow ourselves to let go and surrender is when the answer comes to us. So we have to put in a lot of work to get the clarity that we know we have within us. And I think it's so interesting that the question was posed of, I think it's a confidence thing, the reason why I can't handle discomfort. And I don't think that's the case. I think that it's so much deeper than that, right? What is confidence? Let's take it a level deeper and say, what is deeper than confidence? You are deeper than confidence because you are everything. I think it's taking it a level deeper and saying, well, what about confidence? Well, it's like recognizing that you are no different than anyone else in this world. These thoughts that you're having right now are not unique to you. And a matter of fact, I'm sure several people listening to this episode will heavily identify and relate to what this question is asking. So I think the point of that is that the more you can comprehend and deeply understand that this is not something that is unique to you, the more you're going to be able to say, oh, everyone experiences this if they're thinking about the things that I think about. And if that's the case, and those people achieve great things, if those people know the path they want to go down, if they pick it, choose it, achieve, succeed, make money, do the life that they want to do, if they're able to do all of that and also have the same thoughts as me, if they at one point had these thoughts, do you need confidence in that instance? Is confidence going to be the answer? You see what I mean? Does it go beyond that? Is it recognizing that confidence is somewhat of an illusion, you can go deeper in that and say, what's holding me back other than just myself? Because at the end of the day, it's just ourselves that hold us back. And that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's like confidence is kind of like a very surface level word. I think beneath confidence is really like the ability to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And it was really making me think about, okay, the process of getting to know yourself is a very nuanced one because it's not linear, right? And just to reference my own experience in this journey I've been on of trying to get to know myself and figure out who I really am, it's been very convoluted. And just to give it by way of example, 2 years ago, I remember, I think it was a little bit after COVID, I started going on TikTok. I like downloaded it for the first time. And I remember seeing creators and seeing people and be like, wow, like, look at them. Like, they're posting videos and they're expressing themselves. And there was just one particular creator who I was really impressed by. And I would kind of go back and forth to being like, am I attracted to this person? Like, what is this? And I started following along their journey. And at the same time, I kind of started to think about, why am I so interested in what this person's doing? Like, and at that point, I couldn't recognize that there was something I was seeing in them that I wanted to come out of myself. I was not able to access at that point. So I started getting kind of thoughts of like, maybe something came over me. It wasn't even thoughts, like Michael Singer says. Like sometimes when we get these realizations and insights, they're embodiments. It's a feeling that just comes over us. In the way I'm talking right now, I'm not thinking right now. Like, I really want to say that again. As I'm talking right now, I'm not thinking. So at some point of our life, like, almost got scared that if we don't have the thoughts, we won't be able to know what we're saying. Or it's the same thing about giving a speech, right? Like, there's something, some level or something that happens where our brain, like, we just know how to do it. We just know how to talk. We just know, like, how do you go think about when you're walking, right? When you're on a walk and your one foot's going in front of it. Are you thinking about that? No, it just happens, right? Are you thinking about your heart beating? Are you thinking about your eyes blinking? No, it just happens, right? Does the ocean think about the tides? No, it just happens. So when you see in life, and not just in nature, but in yourself too, how the process of your food digesting, all of these things are done not by the logical mind, but there's a lot of, like, on a more scientific level, they talk about how our brain is divided between the left brain and the right brain, one being more logical and one being more intuitive, creative. And when we start to learn how to tap into that side that is not based on thoughts. So going back to the example, I then started like getting some sort of insight to say, oh, I'm going to make a TikTok. And again, it wasn't even a thought I had. It just kind of happened. Like, so then I started posting videos, and then I started posting videos, and eventually our friend was like, hey, you guys should start a podcast because you guys talk so much. So we started a podcast, and it's been about a year of podcasting on and off. And it's been about a year and a half of me posting videos. And it's through this journey that I've gotten to know myself. So it's through the journey of doing a lot of uncomfortable shit that I didn't want to do. Like, it has been really uncomfortable to do this podcast. Now, every now and then it's a little uncomfortable, but I feel so much more at ease doing it now because I learned how to do it. So I think if we're talking about how do we get to know ourselves, right? What does it look like to figure out who you really are? And in the recognition that the answers aren't on Google, the answers are not on Reddit, the answers are in you. Okay, so then how do I tap into that? I think a large part of it is, instead of Googling the question about yourself, maybe you start Googling creative journal events near me. Maybe you start looking to do things because it's that experience of you immersing yourself in the world where you will start to learn about yourself. You can only learn about yourself so much by just sitting on your couch on your phone, right? Like, you can only learn about yourself so much by just scrolling on TikTok. Because ultimately, when we're consuming all this content, we're just consuming other people's lives. And the other people that you're seeing, the other people that you're watching are doing the work themselves. How are they doing it? By posting the content or doing whatever they're doing. And this doesn't have to be about social media, but I think social media is a really great way of this beautiful, intangible art that happens of us getting to know ourselves. That is something that's so it's just like honestly like pretty like spiritual when you think about it. It just happens. Like the process of getting to know ourselves just happens. But I think in large part it happens when we start doing things new, when we start exploring new things. So to the listener, I would say the effort that you're putting in looking for answers, recognize number one, there is no answer because you are ever evolving. You are ever changing. You might feel something today and that might change tomorrow. So instead of looking for answers, look for new experiences that you can do. And you probably innately know what those are, and you are probably scared of them. Start doing the shit that scares you. Because I think a lot of the time when we push ourselves and do shit that we don't want to do, the answers come, but it's not through the mind. It's not a thought that arises. It's the experience and that brings in and services a level of inner knowing. I think I just talked for like 10 minutes, but
Yeah, you said a lot there. The two things I really took away that I would like to frame to make sure that the listener understood it the way I understood it, because I thought it was really powerful. One being the way that you were talking about how our brain just knows how to walk. Our brain knows how to eat. It knows how to do all of these things where we don't think about it. We know how to breathe. All of these things just happen naturally without us thinking about them. So does that have to be different from anything else in our life? Is it a man-made idea that the rest of our life can't be that way? Do we lean too heavily into our logical mind? Do we think too much about how things should be, that there's a right and a wrong and there's an equation for this life? Is that the case? I would agree with myself and say, yeah, that's all kind of made up. It's just a matter of how willing we are to, one, decondition ourselves from societal standards that in order to get what we want, we have to work really fucking hard and break our back, and recognize that also it's just as much as we're willing to surrender, how we're willing to face ourselves, face our demons, face the discomfort that comes with all of that. And you know what's really cool? Something else that Sophie just said that I wanted to hit on. And you said what's gotten you to a place where you feel really excited about the podcast is by pushing through a lot of discomfort. And I fully agree with that. It's kind of the one, you have to be willing to say, I maybe don't have to work really hard in the way that I was always told that I had to. Maybe that can look a little bit different, because I can certainly say I've quote unquote worked really hard in my life, but I've never been more disconnected from myself. I think of my first job where I would take home work and it would be 9-10 o'clock at night and I'd be trying to put something together like a deck, and I'd be drinking wine to calm myself down. And it's like, what a kind of a joke that I feel like I'm working really hard right now, because I'm actually working really hard against myself. I think that I'm working hard. I think I'm impressing people by staying up late on a weeknight and working hard, taking work home. But in reality, I'm doing a huge disservice to myself. I'm disconnected from myself, and I'm forcing myself to work really hard on something that I don't feel connected to, that I don't like, and something that I don't even feel connected to or see a future for. Why am I doing this? And I think that's because it's so easy to get lost. So going back to what Sophie said of like, the reason I was doing that was because I was afraid to face the real discomfort, the real stuff, not the discomfort of staying up late and not being able to quote unquote relax before work and all that. My idea of work is not that. My idea of work is being honest with yourself and showing up to the realities of what holds you back from actually feeling good day to day and feeling happy and feeling connected and feeling like you're not thinking too much about what you're doing. Because when we go really deep into this, when we, like the listener said, when we sit in the discomfort of uncertainty, it's so fucking uncomfortable. Like, it sucks. There's no shortcut. But the reward is how we are actually meant to live in this world, which is like walking on air, things just happening. That doesn't mean that real work isn't going to have to come up where we get hit really hard and we're like, whoa, what's happening? I got to reflect. I got to look inward. I have to face this. I can't react to it. But that's ultimately the cycle of life, I think, is facing the real discomfort and then going and enjoying life and letting that come back down, where we have to face the discomfort. But it's all very real. It's all very connected, deeply connected. Because if we're not connected to ourselves, then we're not connected to the greater powers that are around us that actually make all of the decisions for us, in the sense of we are that. So if we're disconnected from that, we have really no control over our lives. We never have control over our lives, but we can be connected to them, and we can feel connected to what we do in our life by letting go and surrendering. So I don't know what just happened. I don't know what happened. I feel like I just woke back up.
You weren't thinking.
That's
what happened.
I wasn't thinking at all during that. Whoa.
I remember reading something recently, like a few months ago, that was like, maybe it was not a left brain, brain, but it was like, we're so used to using our brain so much throughout the day to think, and the answers are not going to come from thinking. And clearly the listener, like, it's so funny. You're taking the same problem, the fact that we think, and then just putting it in a new arena by Googling. Like, that's not where the answer is going to come from. And I had a lot of thoughts with what you're saying. This topic, I think, is kind of the core of what we talk about in the podcast. Like, I have so much to say. So let me just try to, like, really just not think and just talk. Okay. So every single person deep down knows who they are. It is something I think we know at birth, when we are so young and we're children and we're just so carefree. And the answer of who you are and who everyone is the limitless potential that exists in everyone. So I want everyone who's listening to this podcast right now to take a pause wherever you are and look up at the sky. If you can't see the sky because you're in your apartment or it's dark, do it tomorrow when you're outside and just look up. And remember, and think about, where are you? I'm looking up now. Where are we, right? You see the blue sky if it's a blue day, if it's a sunny day. And you think about what goes after that sky, right? Well, there's the layers of the earth, and then you enter the galaxy. Okay. So we're on a planet, right? Okay, so we're on a planet. Okay, then look at your fingers. Oh, I have 5 fingers. I have feet. Like, what the hell is any of this? What is this? And the matrix, the illusion that we live in, is not recognizing that we literally are supernatural beings. Like, we have a heart that beats and a brain that can create airplanes and cars. Like, this was all done by people just like you. These are all done by literally your species. Like, we've tried to, oh my God, I'm really having a lot of insights. It's almost like we've tried to make being a human so much different than it actually is by kind of trying to make it more like we're not a species, we're not animals, we're not nature, we're separate from all that. Like, we've really, whoever did whatever in the billions and billions of years we've been alive, this idea has been created that we're separate from this force. So in asking the question of who you are, it's letting go of all the things that you are not. It's letting go of all the beliefs that you have about yourself, about you being small, someone who can't do shit, or someone who can never achieve those things, or being all the insecurities, or thinking you're not good enough, or thinking no one cares what you think. Like, you have to look at, confront, and face all the beliefs you have about yourself to get to the core of who you really are. There's no other way to do it. There's no shortcut. There's nothing. And like Michael Singer says, spirituality is looking at your rocks and recognizing what's been in you for all these years that has gotten in the way of you recognizing who you really are. And I would recommend to everyone and anyone to go to therapy, because that's where you can really, really dive deep and work through all of this. Yeah, it's just, the answers are not going to come from Google. They're not going to come from your friends. They're not going to come from your family. The answers are going to come when you recognize that your whole life you've been looking in the wrong places. When you recognize that you've been living in a delusion of your mind, and it's not your fault. Like, it's not your fault. Like, we all live in this bullshit of the matrix, of conditioning, of literal brainwashing to make us not understand our power and our capabilities.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Something else I just thought with her follow-up, she was asking, how do I know what I want with my life? And I can fully relate to this. As someone who left their career job and is nannying and is also doing a podcast, Life Unpotted, this one, I often ask myself, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? There was a time where I thought this was the right decision, and I know it is. There's days I don't, though. And what I have to say about questioning, what do I do with my life? I think we've been told that our life is our career. Our life is solely based off of how we make our money, because in America, we are told that is your identity. It's how you make your money. That's how we base you. That's how we rank you based off of your value. That's how we know where to put you. That's just how the world makes sense. And I think what I'm learning is that how we spend our lives are so much greater than just how we make money. That's not to say how we make money is not important, right? Because it does make a big part of our time, but it doesn't have to look how you thought it should look your entire life. And I want to say something that's really important, because as you're on this journey of growth, spiritual growth, whatever it may be, you are going to develop yourself through ways that is not just at your job, at your 9-to-5 job, whatever hours you work. I had this idea. I was under the impression that my job was the only place I was going to learn, to grow, to become more confident, to flourish. And it's just not the truth. It wasn't the truth. Yes, there are jobs that make us grow and push us a lot. I won't deny that. But at the end of the day, it is a transactional position where you are making someone money. And maybe that's not for all careers, but for most careers, I feel like that's how it is, unless you're maybe in like the healthcare system. But what I've learned is that on this journey, there's so many other ways to grow, to flourish, and to become who we really want to be. And oftentimes, it's actually not going to come from your job. This could be kind of like Sophie said, instead of Googling, asking what I want to do with my life, it's learning about who you are, surrounded by people who are doing things that you are also doing that is somewhat new, like journaling, finding a space to join and show up as that person that you are learning to become. And I think that is ultimately going to be the stepping stone that leads us to our next lesson of ourselves, which always is going to lead us to our next opportunity, whatever that may be, because we never know. I mean, I will say, like, our career, it's not linear by any means. I mean, it might be for some people, but it doesn't have to be. And I think the way I've been looking at life is it's experience based. It's based off how do I want to live my life? What is the environment I want to cultivate? What is the hours I want to cultivate? How do I, most importantly, how do I want to show up every day? How can I show up every day being that person? Where can I do that? And I just think it's so much more than that. I think that sometimes the answers of figuring out what you want to do with your life need to be brought down to what can you do right now that's going to fill your life and make it more full for you to live in. And that can be anything. That can be joining a club, that can be connecting with others, that can be starting a podcast, that can be starting an Instagram community. It can be so many things. And I think I will say, from us starting this podcast, I have never learned more. I feel so proud of something because we created it. I never thought I could do this in my entire life. I could create something that I feel so connected to, so proud of, and so impacted by. And I do think there is so many lessons in building something, whether that be, I mean, we all have access to social media, whether that be a social media community, whether that be a YouTube channel, anything. I think there's so many lessons to be found there and to help you figure out what you want to do with your life, because it's free and it's how you can spend your time and you can connect with people and you can grow. You can see yourself reflected. I think it's endless, the opportunities.
100%. And I think it's like, stop intellectualizing it. Stop trying to make this another calculation that you've solved, and try to feel it in your body. Try to do experiences and I say this with everything. Do an internal audit, a life audit of your life. And with everything you're doing in life, what feeling states come up? How do you feel about that? If you're wondering if you're with the right partner, take time to yourself to really just find stillness and don't think about it. A lot of our answers will come from just being and just from just sitting through the anxiety that comes up, like you have to let the anxiety come up. You have to let the fear come up. You have to let the emotions come up. If you try to find ways out of uncertainty, you're just finding ways away from yourself. The answer to who you are comes from sitting in the feelings you don't want to feel. So the next time you feel like you want external validation, remember that nobody knows you. And the only person that will ever be able to really connect and understand yourself is you. The reality of it is we're alone in this life. The only person we really have is ourselves. Yes, we're connected to everyone. Yes, we have the community, but nobody experiences your thoughts and emotions. Nobody experiences the things that you experience through your own awareness. So if you're looking to ask somebody else, all you're going to get is their opinion. If you're looking to Google, all you're going to get is somebody else's experience. But when you look to yourself, when you sit in the discomfort, when you push yourself to try new things, when you really, really confront, like I started making journals and journaling and asking, what are my limiting beliefs? What are the things I think I can't do? Because I think a lot of the journey and figuring out what we want to do is confronting all the things we think we can't do. I could talk about this topic for like 2 hours, and I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear if she found it is. I think the reality of it is stop seeking answers and start living. Stop thinking so much and start embodying. I think this is not really, the question of who I am is not really one you will ever find an answer for. It's recognizing that life is uncertain. There is, and there may not be an answer.
And I think more than figuring out who am I, it's figuring out how do I interact with this world? How do I get into flow with this world? What environments cultivate that? Obviously, it's all your internal environment, but what external environments help, right? We are all the same. And I think ultimately when we recognize that, we're able to see that there's nothing really about me that has to be too much different than others, but there is something that's going to make you tap into flow. And I think that's how we want to live our lives. I know that's how I want to live my life.
And just to echo literally everything we just said, like in Daisy and I responding to these questions, this is just our own experience. Like we are telling you what we've learned from our experience. Like, again, take this all with a grain of salt because you're clearly, to the listener, you're trying to find the answers, but we don't have them. We don't have the answers. No less than Google does. Yes, we've gone through a lot of inner work, but you might find your own discoveries on your own journey. So always remember that the answers are there. They've always been there and they always will be there. The only thing getting in the way of you accessing them is thinking that they're not there. And in looking for them outside of you and Googling them or asking your friends, what you're really doing there is saying, oh, I won't be able to figure this out. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't have the answers. Oh, I just don't know. So I think to close out this topic, I don't know if I'm going in circles at this point, but just saying that there's a lot more in you than you might think. And in order to access these feelings, meditating, journaling, going for walks, sitting, crying, I have learned so much from myself of just crying, facing all the shit I didn't want to face. So if there's any part of you, and maybe the best place to start is by asking yourself, in what ways am I not living authentically in my life? And for me, this all started with my sexuality, and it was like a domino effect from there. So yeah, I think this is a great question, and I hope it was helpful.
Thanks for listening, and we are so happy you've been here. Don't forget, if you have questions, email us at info@livelifeumpotted.com.
Or send a voice message. I loved receiving the voice message.
Yeah, you can email us that as well. It was super fun, and we would love to play it. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, and also no pressure. We'll edit down the voice message to put in the podcast, so feel free to just talk your words. There's no such thing as rambling, and yeah. Well, thank you all so much. We hope you have a great weekend. We really enjoy this series. If you haven't already, rate, review, like our podcast, subscribe, share it on Instagram, because your support makes all the difference. All right, y'all. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the weekend.